Have you ever felt like you're living in a fog, choosing safety over progress without knowing why? Maybe you think you're afraid of failure or judgment, but what if the truth runs much deeper? The scariest thing isn't being seen by others, it's seeing yourself completely. Fear is the silent architect of your life. It doesn't scream, it doesn't attack. It hides quietly in your daily choices, in the opportunities you let go, in the words you hold back, in the silence that replaces your truth. It doesn't shout run, it whispers, not yet. And most people don't even realize they're obeying it. You think you're afraid of failure, rejection, or being judged. But no, what you're really afraid of is seeing yourself fully, because deep down you know you're not living at your full capacity. Carl Jung, one of the greatest minds in psychology, said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." Think about that. You're not just afraid of falling or being wrong. You're afraid of what will happen if you stop pretending, if you stop hiding behind excuses, and finally confront the whole truth, your brilliance, your flaws, your raw potential. Let's bring it to life. Have you ever stayed in a relationship that felt wrong, but told yourself it was safer than being alone? That's fear. Have you ever held back an idea in a meeting because you didn't want to sound stupid, even though your heart was racing to share it? That's fear. 2. Have you ever spent hours scrolling your phone to avoid starting something important? That's also fear, disguised as procrastination. Jung believed fear isn't always just emotional, it's spiritual. Fear rises when we live disconnected from our true self, when we bury our pain, anger, desire, and strength. Instead of facing these pieces, we shove them into the unconscious, and that's where the danger begins. Because as Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In other words, unacknowledged fear becomes your master. It chooses who you love, what you pursue, how far you go, and how you feel about yourself, all without you even knowing. That's why fear feels like destiny. That's why we keep repeating the same patterns, because the real battle isn't out there. It's in here, in the parts of ourselves we've never dared to face. And that's exactly what we're going to uncover today. Not motivational fluff, but deep psychological truths Carl Jung left behind. A roadmap to confront and dissolve fear from the inside out. So if you've ever felt stuck, paralyzed, or haunted by the question, why do I keep holding myself back? Stay with me. What you're about to learn might finally set you free. But first, understand this: fear is not the enemy, it's the messenger. Previously, we uncovered that fear is not your enemy, it's a messenger. But what exactly is it trying to tell you? Most people misread the message. You feel fear before stepping on stage, before telling someone how you truly feel, before launching that business, before ending a relationship, before setting a personal boundary. And what do we usually do? We freeze, we delay, we shrink ourselves. Why? Because we've been taught to treat fear like a wall, a sign to turn back, a red flag to retreat. But Carl Jung saw it differently. Where your fear is, there is your task. That's not just poetic, it's a psychological compass. Whatever scares you the most is not a signal to run, it's a sign to come closer, to investigate, to listen, to reconnect with the part of yourself you've long been separated from. Because fear is born from disconnection from your instincts, your intuition, and your shadow. Imagine this: your soul is knocking at your door with a message. I want you to grow. But instead of opening the door, you turn up the TV, scroll Instagram, or whisper, "Not now." That knock gets louder. That's fear. Not here to punish you, but to wake you up. Here's a real-life example. You're offered a leadership role at work. For a moment, you feel excited, but then fear creeps in. What if I'm not good enough? What if I fail in front of everyone? What if they see through me? So you decline. You stay safe. But here's the twist. That role was never just about the job. It was life asking you, are you ready to become more of who you really are? And fear? It was simply the resistance trying to protect an outdated version of you. In Jungian psychology, Fear often signals that your ego, your full self, is afraid of dying. It fears losing control. But your soul, it craves expansion. So next time fear shows up, ask yourself, is this fear trying to keep me safe or just keep me small? That single question could shift the course of your entire life. Now that you understand fear is not your enemy, but a deeply intelligent messenger, let's go one level deeper. Where is this fear coming from? To find the answer, we must step into the hidden realm of the shadow, the part of you you've rejected. We uncovered how fear speaks the language of your shadow, the parts of yourself you've repressed just to be accepted. Now, let's go deeper. Yes, fear is the shadow's language. It's not loud, but it's always present. And it's been whispering to you for years. Let's make it real. You grew up in a household where anger was labeled bad. You likely buried that emotion. Now, as an adult, you struggle to set boundaries. You avoid conflict. That's your shadow. You were told you were too emotional, too sensitive, so you shut down your feelings. And now you fear intimacy because you're terrified someone might truly see you. That's also the shadow. Carl Jung explained this with piercing clarity. The shadow is a moral problem that challenges the whole ego personality to become conscious. It involves recognizing the dark aspects of the personality as present and real. In simple terms, facing fear isn't just about becoming braver, it's about becoming whole. Because fear isn't only about what you're afraid to do, it's about who you're afraid to become. Let that settle in. If you've ever said to yourself, I'm not the kind of person who speaks up, I could never handle that kind of attention, that dream is too big for someone like me, that's not humility. That's your shadow speaking, fear, shaped by every version of yourself you buried just to be accepted. Here's the trap. The more you reject parts of yourself, the stronger fear becomes. Because fear doesn't feed on weakness, it feeds on denial. So if you want to destroy fear at its root, stop fighting it. Start listening to it. Ask, what is this fear trying to protect me from? What part of myself have I locked away that I now need to reclaim? This is where real power begins. The kind Jung described not as domination, but integration. Bringing your shadow into the light, not to shame it, but to understand it. And in that moment, fear loses its grip. But here's the twist. Fear doesn't just live in your past or your subconscious. It controls you daily, silently, without you even knowing. Fear isn't always panic. It rarely screams. It prefers disguises. It wears masks. It whispers, you're not ready yet. What if they laugh? Just wait a little longer. Now isn't the right time. These aren't truths. They're defense mechanisms. The mind's way of avoiding discomfort. But remember, comfort never made anyone powerful. Jung warned us, fear often hides behind what we call normal. It wears the face of procrastination, perfectionism, people-pleasing, even being rational. And if you're not alert, you'll mistake fear for just being careful. So now, let's pull back the curtain and expose some of fear's favorite disguises. Starting with one of the most deceptive. When fear shows up as overthinking, we unmasked fear, hiding behind overthinking. But that's only the beginning. Fear wears many clever disguises. Let's start with a familiar scene. Have you ever stayed up all night, playing mental chess over a simple decision? In that moment, fear doesn't scream, don't do it. Instead, it whispers, but what if it goes wrong? What if they judge you? What if you regret it later? That's not strategy, it's paralysis. Fear doesn't want clarity, it wants delay. Carl Jung said, thinking is difficult, that's why most people judge. We overthink to avoid action, but ironically, only action can kill fear. Disguise number 2, fear dressed as perfectionism. You tell yourself, I'll launch the project when it's perfect. I'll speak up when I know exactly what to say. I'll begin when I feel fully ready. Sounds reasonable, right? But the truth is, that's fear wearing ambition's suit. Perfectionism isn't excellence, it's fear of being seen while unfinished. It's your ego trying to protect your self-image from any bruise. But Jung would remind you, Perfection is an illusion, and every time you wait for it, you're training your brain to obey fear. Disguise number 3. Fear is people -pleasing. This one cuts deep. You say yes when you want to say no. You stay quiet to avoid conflict. You smile when you want to scream. Why? Because fear tells you if you're not liked, you won't be loved. If you're not nice, you'll be abandoned. This comes from a wound, often rooted in early life, where your value was tied to pleasing others. Jung warned, when we betray our inner truth for outer approval, we create a false self, and nothing suffocates the soul more than living inauthentically. Disguise number 4. Fear pretending to be logic or realism. This one's sneaky. Fear convinces you that dreaming big is foolish, that people like you don't get to do those things, that playing safe is smart. But ask yourself honestly, how often has being realistic really just meant being scared? Jung once said, your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. If you never check in with your desires, values, or pain, you'll live in a world built by fear and call it safety. So, what's the passion? Fear adapts. It wears any mask you'll believe. It molds itself into your habits, thoughts, even your identity. That's why so many people live unfulfilled lives, not because they lacked talent, but because they mistook fear for logic, comfort, and control. But once you learn to recognize fear for what it is, not a death sentence, but a message from your shadow, you stop reacting and start reclaiming. And that's when transformation begins. Up next, we dive into the heart of it all. How to integrate your shadow and walk the path to true fearlessness. We uncovered the many masks fear wears, but identifying fear isn't enough. Now comes the part most people avoid, and yet it's the most powerful step of all. In a confrontation, this is where the real work begins, the uncomfortable, honest work. And that's why it actually works. Fear starts to die the moment you shine light on it. Carl Jung taught, the only way to break fear is to confront it consciously, not fight it, not ignore it, but integrate it. You don't need to become fearless. You need to become self-aware. Jung believed true transformation only happens when we face and integrate the shadow, the parts of ourselves we've hidden, judged, or denied. He wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So what does that actually mean? It means, if you want to destroy fear, you must know it, name it, sit with it, talk to it, not as an enemy, but as a messenger. Because fear always protects something fragile, something you haven't fully owned yet. So how do you integrate fear? Here are 3 powerful, practical steps. Step 1, name the fear. Write down exactly what you're afraid of. Not vague answers like failure, but specific truths. I'm afraid of looking stupid when I speak up. I'm afraid people will stop loving me if I express my emotions. I'm afraid I'm not good enough to chase this dream. When you name your fear clearly, you pull it out of the shadows and into the light. That's how you start to disarm it. Step 2, identify the origin. Ask yourself, where did I learn this fear? What moment, person, or experience planted that seed? Maybe you're afraid of being wrong because a parent mocked your mistakes. Maybe you avoid conflict because anger meant chaos in your childhood home. These memories live in your subconscious, and until you meet them consciously, they'll keep running your life. Step 3, reclaim what was rejected. This is the most powerful step. Ask yourself, what part of myself did I abandon just to survive? Was it your voice, your assertiveness, your playfulness, your ambition, or creativity? Jung believed these rejected parts don't disappear. They go underground. And until you welcome them back, you'll always feel divided and afraid. So how do you reclaim them? By showing up fully. Speak, even if your voice shakes. Say no, even when it terrifies you. Take the leap, even if fear screams not. Each time you do, your brain rewires, your shadow softens, and fear loses control. This isn't about becoming fearless overnight. It's about becoming fear literate. So when fear shows up, you don't panic. You pause, you listen, and then you move forward anyway. You learned how to stop obeying fear. to speak to it, to decode it and say, I see you, I know why you're here, but I don't need your protection anymore. And just like that, you begin stepping into a new version of yourself, one not ruled by the past, but powered by truth. Now let's go deeper into Carl Jung's core teaching. Individuation, the path to freedom from fear by becoming whole. Jung believed the ultimate goal of human development isn't perfection, it's wholeness. He called this process individuation, the act of becoming fully, consciously yourself, not who the world wants, not who fear sculpted, not who society expects, but you in your totality. This isn't a fluffy motivational phrase. This is deep psychological transformation, because the more you reject parts of yourself, your flaws, your fire, your fears, the more divided you become. And when you're divided within, fear finds room to grow. But the moment you begin integrating the shadow, something powerful happens. You stop being at war with yourself. And when your inner world is at peace, the outer world loses its power to intimidate you. Let's be honest. Most of us were taught to chase love, validation, and success by becoming better, more polished, more likable, more controlled. But what if the real path to peace isn't by becoming better, but by becoming more you? Jung said it best, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Let that land. Not who your parents hoped you'd be, not who society trained you to be, not who fear tricked you into becoming, but who you were before the world taught you to be afraid of yourself. Let's paint a scene. You're in a room full of people. Someone challenges your idea. The old you shrinks, fear whispers, don't speak, don't rock the boat. But the integrated you calmly says, this is my truth. I can express it with clarity and stand behind it. Or maybe you're feeling pulled to start something bold, a business, a relationship, a creative dream. Fear creeps in. You're not ready. You'll fail. Who do you think you are? But now you recognize that voice, not as truth, but as memory. And you say, even if I'm afraid, I'm moving forward anyway. That's individuation in real time, not the absence of fear, but refusing to let fear write your story. Because the opposite of fear isn't confidence. It's clarity, clarity of self, clarity of purpose, clarity of the inner voice beneath all the noise. And the more you live from that place, the more fear begins to change. You learned how fear loses control when you stop running and start living as your true self. But transformation doesn't happen in a single moment. It's built through small, daily choices made with intention. Carl Jung's work wasn't just about insight. It was about integration, about action. To destroy fear at the root, you need new habits, ones that rewire your nervous system and reshape your identity. Because fear isn't just a thought, it's a reflex. And like any reflex, it can be retrained. Let's explore for simple yet powerful daily practices to do exactly that. 1. Shadow dialogue. Start your morning with honest inner reflection. Each morning, sit down with a pen and paper. Ask yourself, what part of me am I trying to hide today? Maybe it's anger, or ambition, or the desire to rest, or to be seen. Write it down. Talk to that part of you, not with shame, but with compassion. This is what Jung meant by making the darkness conscious. You can't heal what you won't even acknowledge. 2. Daily micro-dose. Train your nervous system for courage, one tiny step at a time. Fear hates movement, so each day, do one thing that stretches your comfort zone, even just a little. Speak your opinion in a group. Ask that intimidating question. Say no when you usually say yes. Make the call you've been avoiding. Each act tells your brain fear is not a stop sign, it's a starting line. Do this daily and you shift your baseline. Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These small dares interrupt fate. They reclaim your life from autopilot. 3. Self-reflection. At night before bed, take a few quiet minutes to look back on your day. Ask, when did fear show up today? Did I obey it or challenge it? What would my higher self have done instead? This isn't criticism, it's self-study, and it builds powerful emotional awareness. You'll start to notice what triggers fear, when does it appear, what does it whisper, and when you see the pattern, you can change the pattern. Reconnect with the body back aus fear. Lives there. It's in your shoulders, in your breath, in your gut. Jung believed the psyche and the body are deeply connected. So, include your body in your healing, take cold showers, meditate through discomfort. Dance. Stretch. Walk in silence. Anything that brings you back into your senses. Because when you learn to sit with fear instead of fleeing from it, your nervous system rewires. And what once felt like a threat begins to feel like fuel. We talked about building psychological endurance, not chasing perfection, but strengthening the internal muscle that Jung called individuation in motion. Fear might still show up, but it won't drive your decisions anymore. You'll feel the fear and still speak your truth. You'll hear the doubts and still move forward. You'll sense the old reflex, but respond with the new self. Here's a truth most people never hear. The very thing you're most afraid of is usually the gateway to the life you were meant to live. Carl Jung didn't believe fear was something to eliminate. He saw it as a psychological signal, pointing you towards something your soul is finally ready to integrate. Fear doesn't arise around things that don't matter. It shows up when something touches your identity, your desire, your deepest growth. That's why we fear speaking our truth, loving fully, creating something original, setting boundaries, stepping into leadership. We tell ourselves, I'm not ready. But what if fear shows up because you are? Let's flip the script. Instead of asking, how do I get rid of this fear? Ask, what is this fear protecting me from that I'm finally strong enough to face? This is where Jung's concept of the self comes in. Not the ego self, but the greater self. The full version of who you were meant to become. And here's the truth, the path to that self always runs through the fire. Jung said it plainly, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Your ego wants safety, your soul wants expansion, and fear is the tension between the two. Let's get honest, that dream you're too scared to say out loud, that's where your calling lives. That truth you've been avoiding because it might break things, that's where healing begins. That side of yourself you've hidden to keep the peace, that's where your real power is. You don't need more confidence, you need more alignment with truth. Fear wants you small, silent, and safe. But once you realize it's pointing to what matters most, everything changes. Let me paint the picture. You get offered a huge opportunity. Your heart races, your hands shake, your mind screams, you're not ready. But then you remember what Jung taught, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. So you walk in, afraid but awake, exposed but empowered, and what happens? You grow. You shed the old skin. You begin becoming the version of yourself that fear tried to keep hidden. By now, you've seen it. Fear isn't your enemy, it's your teacher. And Carl Jung never wanted you to conquer fear the way the world tells you to. You saw that fear doesn't block your path. It marks the entrance to the sacred parts of yourself, your truth, your power, your destiny. Carl Jung never taught us to conquer fear by becoming louder, tougher, or more dominant. He didn't want you to fight fear. He wanted you to understand it, to listen to it, and to walk through it with awareness and intention. Because fear often guards the doorway to the most meaningful parts of your being. So let's return to where we began. You don't destroy fear by pretending it doesn't exist. You destroy it by meeting it with consciousness, by dragging it out of the shadows and holding it in the light of awareness. Jung said it best. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This journey is not about perfection. It's about integration. It's about becoming whole. When you stop hiding from fear, it starts to lose its grip. When you embrace your shadow, it becomes your strength. When you listen to your deepest instincts, they lead you home, not to who the world expects you to be, but to who you truly are. So next time fear shows up, don't shrink, don't run, don't numb. Pause. Look it in the eye and ask, what truth are you trying to show me? Because when you face fear consciously, you don't just become braver, you become free. If this message resonated deeply with you, don't just scroll away. Take action. Drop a comment below and say, "I'm ready to face my fear." I read every single one, and your words might just inspire someone else today. Make sure to subscribe if you want more unfiltered wisdom from Jung and other great minds. And if you're serious about your inner growth, tap that notification bell. Because friend, we're just getting started.